Hi, this is Maya Martz with CMIT220, and I'm going to show you a couple Active Directory configurations in order to prevent the previous password attacks. Alright, so we are in the MMC in our group policy, and we're going to go into our domain. This is the domain that has been getting attacked. And then down to domains, seaside.edu, and then the default domain policy. Alright, that has loaded. You've selected a link to a group policy objects. Changes you make here are global to the group policy and will impact all other locations where it is linked. I'm happy with that. Okay. And here we see this. I have domain users, and this is who the things are going through. I changed this from authenticated users to domain users, and then in delegation, I re-added authentication users. This is a common problem I encounter with this. Either way, it prefers to have this in here and this in here. All right, we're going to add a new group policy, and we're going to go to Edit, and we're going to go to Policies, Windows Settings, Security-Based Policies. I'm going to expand this a little bit, and I'm going to change that. Account policies and password policies. Now, here are some of the things that we can apply to make this work. Password complexity requirements is enabled, so the passwords that we set must meet certain requirements. Minimum password length is enabled, although I am going to increase that. I work personally in a secure environment, and we have, why doesn't it want me? Okay, so I can't set it as high as I want to, but I work in a secure environment, and we have a password minimal length of 16 characters. Within my environment, I work at a bank, and our minimum is 16 characters because we just have such requirements for securing data. All kinds of people put their faith in the bank, so we have to keep these a bit higher. Relax. We are going to disable this so that it cannot be relaxed. And what else do we want? Enforce password history. Right, so we have a minimum of 14 characters, which is going to be annoying for me, but you know, better than getting hacked. And then account lockout threshold is the next one. Now, right now, our accounts will not get locked out. Here we have put it at 3. This means that after 3 incorrect attempts, then we are locked out. We're going to apply that. And this automatically changes duration and allow administrator account lockout, and then reset account lockout counter after 10 minutes. So these are the configurations that go along with this. This means that we get locked out for 10 minutes, and then after 10 minutes we get more attempts. We could set this as long as we want, but I'm going to keep it here for now. 10 minutes, 3 invalid lockout attempts. This is the other one. Whether or not you want to implement this is fine either way. However, enabling it means that any of the attacks that we have going at our account might be a bit easier to handle. Alright, since I'm in my administrator account, I decided to make a third victim account with a password that follows our new password policy. We're going to add that. Password enter is longer than 14 characters. With Windows prior will not be able to use this account. What would you like to follow? There are password limits on older computers. However, I think that this will be a fine requirement. I'm going to type yes. I'm going to type yes. And here we are. Check minimum password length, complexity, and history requirements. All right, and so our password did not follow our requirements. So let's look at these. All right, I have pulled up this, and we see here that it does not meet the proper requirements. At least 6 characters, contain characters from 3 of the following categories. Uppercase, all that, and so we did not. All of these enablements make our user configurations more safe. So let's fix that and make a proper password. Password, password, password. "14 characters, yes." And we have completed that successfully. Net user victim 3. He is a domain user, which is one of the reasons he is subject to all of these. Close up the, okay. And let's go back to our other let's go back here and try some of our fun little password attacks and see if they continue to work. Now, our root user attack against victim 3 this time. Let's do that. We've tested 5 different logins. These are all our basic logins. Nope. There it is. These are all our basic logins that we thought maybe someone with a less secure password would use, and we had 0 successes. And we weren't allowed to set a more dangerous password because of our configurations. Now let's try our other one and see if we need to change anything else in our Active Directory in order to make that work. Password spray, seaside.edu, and we're going to check password against our usernames file. Let's take a look at that file real quick. Victim 3, 4, 5. So we have this very simple password. And we have 0 successes. Alright, so now that our normal logins are a bit different, let's go over what's changed. So, here's the password list that I just pinged against victim 3. Originally, this didn't work because I had not run gp update /force, but now it has. We're going to run that. And so while we tested 12 logins, we find one that none of them are correct, but let's imagine that we do have a correct login. Let me just add that to the list. Do this. We have got a success. This is expected as Kerbrute does not ping the same differences, the same thing as an actual login. But let's try this. Now that we know the password, we are going to attempt to get in. And course, I made it way too long. The sign-in method you're trying to use isn't allowed. For more info, contact your network administrator. So that previous attack has essentially locked us out despite the fact that we pinged with a success. So while changing the lockout minimum requirements has slightly helped us, we are still dealing with the fact that the password is now known. Now that I've demonstrated how exactly Kerbrute and our lockout interacts, I will tell you one more way to counteract this. So within group policy, let's open that back up, add remove snap-in, group policy object, wrong one, group policy management. Let's go back to that exact one. Windows settings, security, account policies, and account lockout policy. Allow administrator account lockout. This can be set as high as 199. But the lockout duration define the complement must be greater or equal to the reset time. This policy has a meaning. If we set the account lockout duration to 0, the account will be locked out until the administrator explicitly unlocks it. And when we apply that, this means that until the user verifies that they got locked out, that the attacker using Kerbrute cannot access it. So let's run that. We have found one successful login out of the 5 that we have done here. And now we will go to victim 3 and attempt to get in using our newly in quotation marks discovered password. The sign-in method you're trying to use isn't allowed. For more info, contact your network administrator. For context, it's been 10 minutes since the last time we've logged out, so theoretically we should be able to get in here. Now, this is a pretty restrictive policy. It means anyone trying for more than 3 times cannot get in at all. But it is necessary in some scenarios, like in highly secure environments. It is necessary in some highly secure environments where you'd have to call, say, IT to unlock you, or, you know, whoever else has the power to. And since you're making a call, they can verify, secondly, that you have not been the reason, that you were the reason that you got locked out and it wasn't a bad actor. Now, would I recommend 3 lockouts, 3 attempts before getting locked out completely? Probably not. It does not. Most people tend to forget their password every once in a while, and sometimes you don't realize that your number lock is on or your cap locks is on. And having that happen across the company makes it so that IT is dealing with a lot of very mundane unlock requests, which they already do. However, setting a higher lockout count and then enabling you have to call someone to get it unlocked is a good way to keep security. For instance, I work at, as I mentioned earlier, a bank, and while I don't think I've shared any confidential information besides the password length requirement that we use, which is across, I've worked at a couple banks and it's all been that, so I didn't think it was secret. Having to call somebody, we have in-house video cameras where we call IT. And so they can verify us by that and by other things in our authentication codes that we have if we have a bank account there. And essentially, IT can be very sure. Now, if IT gets a lockout request and then they look at our logs and they realize, oh, this person had several login attempts late last night and then they got to their computer this morning and found that they were locked out, then that might be a sign of someone attacking or trying to run password locks, password brute force attacks against, the company. So I would recommend a higher lockout account. I set it to 3, but it could be any amount, and then requiring authentication from an administrator in order to unlock that account. As that is my rundown of Kerbrute, and that is my rundown of the administrative policies that I recommend in order to manage it. Thank you so much, and goodbye.